Psychic Unicorns. Let's just roll with it. And we're going to be talking about D&D today. So, Eryn, as you know, you all know me. I play D&D with our co-host today on Sundays and a homebrew campaign. Would you like to introduce yourself? Maybe say a little bit about, speaking of D&D, about your art on your avatar.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect segue, right?
I know, right? So hi, my name's Dee. I've been playing for, it's been, I want to say 3-4 years now. So the Sunday game that I play with Eryn, I actually play the character that is on my avatar. Her name's Ivaruli Amastasia. Had to be super extra because, that's elves. Yeah, I played like a whole array of different classes and characters. Yeah, I really like D&D and the freedom that it kind of gives to creativity and all that good stuff.
Okay, so tell me more about some of your other characters, by the way, because I really like the Kobold.
I love him too. Honestly, that was probably like a fever dream that I had when I made him. So like the idea started off as I really wanted to make a kobold, or rather I wanted to make a character that really leaned into the idea of becoming a dragon. Because I mean, it's Dungeons and Dragons. Like dragons and should kobolds definitely be, like a bigger part of this. So I was like, okay, well, one thing that I know has been pretty common has been a dragonborn. But then I was like, okay, that's pretty common. But you know what I've never seen is a kobold wanting to be a dragon. And they like have draconic ancestry that like isn't necessarily played up in the lore. And I was like, that's a gold mine of stuff right there. So yeah, I started off with Silent Silverscale. That's my kobold. Yeah, he is a silver kobold because silver dragons are my absolute favorite metallic dragons. Like they're just the best.
I do like silver dragons. We talked about this when we were doing our preview, I think, for Candlekeep. We were talking about how silver dragons were your favorite. I think that came up.
Yes, because I love how very cool and intricate they are, because they are, they're your typical dragons of like, oh, well, they think they're superior. But the nice part about it is, so silver dragons, I like their mentality towards humanity, or rather towards the shorter-lived races, because what's interesting about them is I guess it sort of sounds patronizing when you say it this way, but they do actually view like humanity as sort of like pets almost, or like something to kind of like usher away from danger. They're kind of like the shepherds, I want to say, of like the sheep. And I thought that was just such an interesting contrast to how some of the other dragons act and how they view humanity as a whole. And it's, it's unique. It's cool.
Well, golden dragons, are they the most altruistic, or is it bronze? I think I get the two confused.
I want to say, just from what I remember, I think bronze are the most altruistic in terms of like, they won't outright attack you if they like, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Gold dragons, if they sense even an inkling of evil, like if they thought, oh, well, you kicked the puppy on May 24th, oh, well, you gotta go.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very like hard lined, and I was like, I mean, gold dragons are cool, but like silver dragons is where it's at.
Well, I rolled I didn't roll. Our warlock rolled the natural. So I use a modified homebrew divine intervention system because I feel like everyone should have the opportunity to really play into and utilize the piety system, or utilize their deities or their warlock patron. It's not official rules. It's just something I homebrew. So I had the warlock roll for divine intervention in the Chamber of Aranax during Dragon Heist, and to deal with the dragon, because there was Xanath, spoilers for Dragon Heist, by the way, red spoiler bot, can give people a minute, but spoilers for Dragon Heist. In the Vault of Dragons, you fight the gold dragon Aranax, who is the guardian of the dragon. Of course, they're natural shapeshifters, so they transform between dwarven form and golden dragon form. But when you first meet them, they're in gold kind of gold-skinned dwarf form, kind of like glowing, almost like gold body paint or something. Kind of radiate this energy. I had the warlock. They were trying to get the dragon staff, right? They were trying to not only get the gold but also the dragon staff. And the dragon was like, "Take the trinkets. It's fine. You've made your way down here, but you're Centarum, and you have the job. I'm not going to give you the dragon staff." So I had the warlock roll divine intervention to see how the fight would go, and the warlock rolled the natural 1. Which is good for divine intervention. On the percentile dice of 100, they rolled a 1. So I had their patron basically rip the dragon in half as it was trying to transform. And it's an eldritch patron. So they were like, the
Okay.
character is very Kerrigan-like, based on, for any Lovecraft fans, I don't know if you're a Lovecraft fan, but Minogra, who is one of the more feminine deities of shadow and blades type of thing.
Okay.
So I gave her the Kerrigan wings, and the Kerrigan wings act as razors on their own.
Okay.
Just eldritch energy, that kind of thing. So when she popped out of the dragon, she kind of like sliced it in half, and that was the end of that gold dragon. But then they also had to fight Xanathar's guild, which was a big fight.
I mean, but that's still like really, really epic, and those are the type of stories that I really love that come from D&D, and just like I said, creativity that comes from this medium. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. What's your favorite D&D anecdote? Like if that was my 2-minute Reader's Digest anecdote, as far as my first D&D story that comes to mind, I'm very curious to see what yours is. Hopefully it pertains to the Kobold.
Oh no, it does. That was the first one that actually came to mind.
Very exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot, but the Kobold really kind of sticks out in my mind just because I love the little dude so much. So I think the funniest thing that I've ever done with this Kobold, there's a lot of things, just because he's just so chaotic. So the one thing that I did that is probably it'll stick with me through the rest of my D&D career is I made this character. Much like you make any other Kobold or short-lived character, you don't really expect them to live, but you expect them to have their moment in spotlight. And that's kind of what this was. So my DM, who's my best friend, Sophie, invited me to a game, and she had said, hey, I want you to make this character, and I'm going to introduce them to the party. And we're basically going to go through the mountains, and the mountains happen to be filled with a bunch of different things. One of these things that we came across happened to be a statue, and the statue resembled the monkey god Wukong. So the thing about this Kobold is, he's got a speech, I don't want to say a speech impediment, but he's very particular in his speech. He refers to himself as this one. And what I like about him is he's so honest and just very blatant. So when the statue came to life as a god, we didn't know what was going to happen. And so we happened to need the crown that he had. And the crown, actually, we didn't know at the time, but it was a helm, a circlet, of comprehend languages, which is normally a helm. So what happened was we were playing a game, and the goal of the game was to get the circlet from him. So everyone was just like, oh, well, let's be sneaky and let's do this and that. And I was like, I'm not going to do any of that. I rolled second on initiative just before the god moved. So one of the players decided, well, they're going to try and mage hand the circlet off of him in a very sneaky sleight of hand way. Unfortunately, he's all seeing. He's got true sight. He saw that coming. So that didn't work. So I was about maybe 30, 25 feet from this statue, or where he started. So I had the Kobold walk right up to him, and these exact words were, this one would like to become a dragon. This one needs the circlet to become a dragon. You give, please.
I love that.
And he used please. The key thing being here is please, because that's his thing. Always says please. So, of course, before I actually went up, I cast the cantrip friends. Okay. So my DM was like, okay, well, you'll get advantage because that's how friends work. So I got advantage on the charisma check, which was persuasion, against his insight. So his insight was, I believe, a 26 in total, because there was a natural 20 in there. So it was a +6, and then on top of the natural 20 made it all 26. My persuasion was a 7. So I literally needed a natural 20 to beat that insight. Right. And I rolled a natural 20. I to this day, it has been the funniest thing on record in that group, because I literally made this character as a joke one-off, because he's a kobold. They don't live very long.
Right.
But I wanted him to have his moment, and that among other things was his moment.
High praise. We love to see it. So the statue. What was the statue? Was the statue a ghost, a spirit, a specter, a creature?
It basically was like it transformed into the god Sun Wukong of this world.
So it actually transformed into the god. Like it was an avatar of the god.
Yes. So it was literally an avatar of the god who Simon walked up to, said, "Please give me the circlet," and the god said, "Okay," and gave it to him.
I was thinking it might have been like a fae representation or like a creature representation, but no, it was actually the deity came down and embodied that avatar. That's bananas.
Oh yeah. And that's the funniest thing because, like I said, it's just this lowly little kobold who was talking to a deity and was just like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna ask him. I'm gonna say please."
And the deity just gave it to him.
Yeah, just gave it to him.
Amazing. I love it. We're here for it. Also, the moral of the story, don't talk to or touch strange statues or obelisks. Obelisks, if you watch Puffin Forest, you know the Tomb of Annihilation joke there. Don't push over the obelisk. Don't touch it. But your kobold is a silver dragon kobold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a perfect segue back into Candlekeep Mysteries, which is why we're here. Back to the silver dragons, which I believe the silver dragon. You like my segues? I believe the silver dragon was the protector of Candlekeep, if I have that right. The spiritual. Okay.
Yeah, there was a spiritual protector. I don't recall her name, but she was really cool.
To my notes. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh no, I was just saying that I was super excited. I mean, when we were talking about this in the pre-session, I was freaking out because I was like, I love silver dragons, and the fact that you get to introduce and talk to a silver dragon. Not only that, but even though there was a stat block for her, there was actually points in the adventure that were saying you don't have to fight her. You could talk to her, and that's the part that I really like about it. Is it's not just fighty grind, all that type of stuff. There is conversations to be had in some of these adventures.
It's Miram, the Sentinel Worm.
There we go.
Yeah, Miram, the Sentinel Worm, a silver dragon spirit with X-ray vision. I wrote this down and circled the X-ray vision. She is an excellent conversationalist, which was one of the bullet points I think that was provided by Candlekeep Mysteries.
Yes. And
no banish. Oh yeah, that's right. Can't be banished. That's what no banishment means.
Yes.
She cannot be banished because she is a part of Candlekeep. She's a safeguard against basically the rogue memes. So rogues who go into Candlekeep, and for those of you who don't know, the lore of Candlekeep is that the stewards of Candlekeep, the exact name of the stewards is escaping me. I have 20 pages of notes, but I forget more on the adventures and less on the background lore. But in general, the stewards of Candlekeep, I know they have a very specific name. Do you know, Dee, off the top of your head?
No, I'm not as studied in the lore of Candlekeep. It is one of the ones that has escaped me just because a lot of my focus tends to be in Waterdeep specifically.
Ooh, we'll have to talk more about that at a later day because I love Waterdeep.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I did a whole supplement to Dragon Heist, and I really got into the nitty-gritty of all the different stores and shops and districts and everything. But we'll talk more about that on a different podcast.
Definitely.
I'd love to just have a brainstorming session with Waterdeep. But as far as Candlekeep, so in order to get into Candlekeep, which is the great library of Faerun, located on the Sword Coast, just north of Baldur's Gate, it features in Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus as one of the stops that the adventurers can travel to as they're trying to decipher the puzzle box, the infamous puzzle box. And they made, I think I'm saying her name right, Silvira Sirakest or something like that, who is one of the scholars of Candlekeep. But in order to get into Candlekeep, you have to bring a tome, a book, an encyclopedia, some kind of a book. And it has to be one they don't have, which is tricky because this has been their means of entry for hundreds of years, right? You have to bring a book to Candlekeep. And the lore of Candlekeep is actually really intense. It goes really deep, and it dates back, again, hundreds of years. And there's a lot of really rich lore there to be had if you're interested. But the big thing is that you have to bring a book. The reason I like Miram, and I think why both of us like Miram, is because you get a group of adventurers, a group of players, and you're always going to have someone in the party who's like, I'm going to try and just slide this book out and put it in my pack. And that's exactly what Miram is there for. So the rogues who are being and becoming the rogue meme, Miram is there as a safeguard.
Right. The ones who have a little bit of the sticky fingers, if you will.
Yes.
But it's interesting that you bring that up, just because I know that, like, going back to my kobold, not to gush about him or anything, but
You totally can. We love your kobold.
I feel like hilariously he would be one of those rogues who would have tried, because hilariously he's not a rogue. He is just a sorcerer, a draconic sorcerer that's trained in stealth. But he would be one of those characters that would be trying to take the books. I mean, granted, he'd be saying please and thank you,
Right.
but I feel like this would be a really good interaction for him, just because, you know, it's a silver dragon. He reveres dragons so highly.
But the Avowed are the guardians of Candlekeep, and they're the ones who stop you at the door and demand or request, depending on your perspective, to see whatever book you have brought and determine whether or not. You have this is the map of Candlekeep if you want to check it out. So all of the maps, one of the things that we had talked about as one of the cons of this was that the only map that is full color, well, aside from the map of Mystery, which we'll get to, but Candlekeep is the only map that's full color. A lot of the other maps are kind of lackluster. Some of them look like sketches. And we talked about this. I mean, much respect for all the artists for putting their time into it, but Wizards is a multi-million-dollar company now, and they've got a lot of money and a lot of time. Why not add, or even if people like the black and white maps, I know I've heard a couple people say they like them, maybe add a black and white and a color. It's just, there's a lot of inconsistency. Some modules or some fluff/crunch hybrid pieces like Candlekeep have a mix of some will be completely black and white with a kind of a sketch type of situation, and some of them will be full color. So it's really just it's like a coin toss. It doesn't seem like there's consistency. I'm just gonna get all the cons out of the way, because we didn't have a lot of pros. We had a few cons. As if you're considering purchasing Candlekeep Mysteries, to me, having the one full color map, which you can see here on the screen, there's the Court of Air, there's the path leading up, the main gatehouse where the Avowed will kind of check your status at the door, and then the main library, right? And then all these other cool areas that you can explore. This is the map of Candlekeep, full color. And when I bring this up here, you can see that all the other maps are all black and white, and some of them are a little lackluster. I know that the Pool of Eternal Spring, looks like one of them, there were a few that were, I think maybe it was Wisteria Veil. Yeah, Wisteria Veil, if you take a look, it's black and white and it looks like a rough sketch.
Yeah, I do remember this being one of the ones where it's like, I mean, there definitely could have been a little bit more creativity, but I guess in that regard, I mean, it just kind of leads into, like, if you're a really good DM and you believe in your own capabilities to kind of like either make your own map or just kind of go theater of the mind, that definitely would help in that regard. But yeah, no, definitely this type of map, not a fan.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, and at 100%, there is unlimited room for creativity and map making. I actually use Incarnate to make the maps for the homebrew that I'm going to be doing on stream in the future. And Incarnate is an awesome program. And that's what Panda uses. And she uses the free version. So everything that we've been doing in Sunday with our group, that's all free. All free maps.
Oh, I didn't actually know that she used the free version. I know she had mentioned the $25 for the year, because I know I got it. Got the $25 just because I was like, I mean, it's literally $25 for a year.
That's what I did.
And
I did the same thing.
I can't, and they update it pretty frequently. I definitely could not argue with that type of pricing.
Yeah, I mean, she might have done the full year subscription. I thought she was using the free version, but the maps are really good. So there's a good chance that she actually might be using the premium version, which is, again, you said, what, $25 for the year? It's fine. Yeah. And no, they're not paying us. I just really like Incarnate.
It's like, could you sponsor us, please?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to sponsor us in the future, just saying. Incarnate is really nice because I like the world map feature. It's my favorite, because you can make the terrain and the coastline. I was using Worldographer, Hexographer for a while, but it's very simple hexes, and it's really hard to work the coastline. In my experience, I was having a hard time with it. But anyway, back to Candlekeep itself. Yeah, some of the other just cons that I noticed, some of the adventures, right? Because we mentioned that this is, there are 17 mini adventures here to sink your teeth into, right? And of these 17 self-contained miniature adventures, it felt like a decent amount of them lacked any type of meaningful adventure hook, and there was a lack of direction for plug and play. Some of the self-contained adventures I had written down in my notes, it seemed like some of them were a little bit too open-ended, perhaps.
I mean, from my general experience, what I've definitely thought about DMing a homebrew campaign, and every time I kind of start, I do have that feeling of like, well, if I wanted to do a mystery, why wouldn't I just go to something like one of the other systems that are there, like Call of Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu, or something like that. A lot of what I've seen and the general research that I've done from D&D tends to lead more towards political intrigue. But even then, I mean, with the rules that are set up, like I know one of the rules that stick up a lot in my DM group is eventually the characters are going to find out, like, do enough dice rolls, the characters are going to figure out what it is. Or, I mean, players are smart, they're not, I know we all like to joke about, give them a puzzle for a 3-year-old, it takes them an hour, but I mean, players are smart. Like they'll figure it out, or they'll see the threads before the characters do. So I think a lot of it kind of tends to be either not as exciting, or if you have some, like in the reverse case, if the characters are technically smarter than the players, like if you're playing a high intelligence character that would realistically see these threads before the player does, it's not as fun for the player.
Keen mind.
Yeah, like keen mind, like
Liam.
Yeah, like I have Swiss cheese memory. That's why I write things down. But if I have a character that has keen mind and I didn't write this particular instance down, then it's gone.
Right. Well, that's this is going to be my one critical role reference for the podcast. I promise. But Caleb, played by Liam O'Brien, has a keen mind feat, and one of my favorite little anecdotes was there was a point where he just shouted out like "keen mind," and Matt Mercer was like, "Keen mind doesn't work for everything, Liam." But it's a really good feat though, and it would be kind of an overpowered feat for Candlekeep Mysteries, I think, along with some of the other intelligence-based feats. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Especially if you're pairing it with some of the backgrounds, like let's just say, like, what if you're a hermit that has keen mind and like you're just you are that wandering librarian or the wandering, like, I don't know, catalog or something to that effect. Like you're that type of trope. Realistically, these characters would have heard something about this. So that's my general feeling of like mystery could be done better if it had a different system, or if there is heavy editing on the DM's part. And I mean, as DMs, we already have a lot of things to consider. We don't, if we're trying to set up a mystery, you don't want just idea and like it's a cool idea, but XYZ, because the blocks are not all there to kind of stack up.
Right, and that goes back to what we were talking about as the motivations for a book search. It's most of the adventures here are reliant on your characters not only first gaining entry into the city via the Avowed, having to bring a book and having to be vetted by the Avowed. And if your DM really wanted to be obnoxious, they could be like, "Oh, your book's not good enough," Getting to the library, getting through the front door even, and then the whole process of looking for a specific book is a really specific vehicle of getting your characters there. Because again, almost every single one has to deal with getting to Candlekeep or getting to any other library. You can use other libraries. There's one on Eberron, the name escapes me because I've never played Eberron, but there's a great library in Eberron, and there are a bunch of other settings. I think there's one in Greyhawk too. But these great libraries, it's like getting in and what quest you really kind of have to push it a little bit to have a quest revolve specifically around going to find just a book. And in your search for this book, that's when you can plug and play some of these mysteries, which is interesting. if not a little weak in my opinion, but that's it for cons for me. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add on that.
That's all I can really think of off the top of my head that really like bothered me. Oh, no, I do remember one. Just in terms of the kind of playing off of the same idea, I've noticed that some of the earlier or lower level adventures that are in the book aren't as interesting, at least for me, as some of the higher level ones. And I don't know if that's just necessarily a higher versus low level issue, but like I think I'm sure we'll get to it, but there was one adventure where where the characters were fighting mean locks at like level 3-4.
Yeah, I think it was level 4.
Yeah, and I personally hate mean locks because I mean, as their name suggests, they are a terror for players to go against, especially at level 4. If they had a little bit more HP, or just a little bit, like if there is tactics, it shouldn't be as much of an issue. But you're not always going to get the perfect party that's perfectly strategizes how they do things down to a wire. Sometimes just dice roll where they may, and you can't really help that. And mean locks are one of the few creatures that I think could potentially TPK, like even at this level.
Not only the first few that were adventures seemed very lackluster and kind of just fell flat, but the first several, even up to like level 10 or the first 11, 12, 13 adventures, some of them were like very meh. There were a few that really stood out, which sidebar brings me to my own point. I'm reluctant to say that this is worth the $50 digital purchase, the $50 digital purchase, because now the last 3 adventures, specifically Candlekeep Deconstruction, Zakarans, and the Curious Tale adventure, those 3 adventures on their own, and I'll get the names here. Okay, Zikran's Zephyrian Tome, the Curious Tale of Wisteria Veil. That one actually had the map that we were. I think going back to that, we were kind of on the fence of that after. So Zikran's Zephyrian Tome and Xanathoria are the 2 that really stand out to me and continue to stand out to me now. And the reason that those 2 stand out was because Zakarans was the comedy, and I almost said Xanathoria. Oh, Xanthoria. Xanthoria was the best one out of all of them. And it almost felt like some of these adventures could be released as little self-contained adventures, and that putting them in the book with some of these other ones that felt a little lackluster, some that had strong hooks and then petered off. I think the Wisteria Veil one was one that started off strong and it kind of had a lot of question marks in the middle. That was one you had thoughts on with the Beholder.
Yes.
So I want to talk about that real quick.
Yeah. I'm biased because I like the idea of play within play, just especially in D&D. Yeah. And I think like the problem that I kind of had was the Beholder is a cool idea, and I know that it originally gave an idea, the reason for the Beholder being there.
Spoilers, by the way.
Yes, spoilers. So before I say anything, yes, there are spoilers for this particular adventure.
It is part of the art when you flip through the book, so you'll see a beholder, and that's like, oh, there's a beholder in this adventure. So yes. Other than that, moving forward, probably some spoilers with the Wisteria Veil adventure specifically.
Correct. But yeah, it was the reason that it was there was because it dreamed itself there, and I was like, I mean, I guess, but that seems so for what was proposed, it was just kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, I can probably think of a better idea of why it's there. But I mean, for the moment, it works. For what it was, it definitely works. But I think it would be a little bit cooler to have the Beholder perhaps be the character that you were looking for rather than the puppeteer. Just because I feel like, that might have been a little bit more interesting than just the dude and his, whatever he was dealing with.
Yeah, and that was a relatively high level adventure. I think I can pull it up here and see exactly.
That also had that same map
that
also had that same map that we were just talking about with it's very lackluster with the just
Yeah.
kind of forest in the circle, and that was about it.
Written by Kiana Shaw, developed and edited by Chris Perkins, and Hannah Rose. So again, it just it felt a little. That one felt a little flat, but I'm going to share my screen again and go back to, because there are a couple I really am excited about. Going back over to, and I want to thank our producer Lucy for doing a fabulous job. Hi Lucy, we love you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
And all right, so over at, okay, we have some more art I wanted to share over here. So this is the Great Library. You can see it kind of spirals up, which is really cool. I love this art. This is great art. There's a lot of really great lore in here as well. I'm just kind of breezing through some of it. There's a little bit on the Avowed too, which, you know, we talked about gaining entry to Candlekeep. Joy of extra dimensional spaces. I think both of us thought that was a little So I'm going to skip over a few of these. For those of you who are looking for a lighthearted beer and pretzels, or maybe just that you have a serious group of people and you want to just laugh your butts off, check this out. Candlekeep Deconstruction is hilarious.
Yes, I remember this one.
And everything is, so the author has an aversion to the letter C, so they just replace everything with K. And it is just this absolutely bananas bonker adventure from start to finish, whereas the ultimate goal is to take off on a spaceship that is a converted barn and blast off into the multiverse. And there's giant cockroaches and all kinds of shenanigans. So here you can see the art here, right? Here's the tower that's part of the farm, and you. The end goal of the adventure is just to launch that rocket into space. And also there's these adorable little things in here, this skitter widget
yes.
That we talked about. So kind of an eccentric adventure that is just, it starts with an earthquake, and it's just, I know you had some thoughts on that. It's amazing.
Oh, I just love space. Like it has an adventure where you can go to space. Heck yeah, I want to go. And then the skitter witches were probably like some of my favorite little creatures because they're so adorable. Because those were the adults, and then they had, I think they were the kitty witches or something like that.
Kitty widgets, yeah.
Yeah, kitty widgets. That's what it was. But they're just so very cute, and I just see a DM just kind of making, you know, funny little voices for the guys, and they're just adorable little things.
Right. So in the adventure, not the adventure hook, but the little the GM notes, it says, in this adventure, the characters fight against the ticking clock to stop a misguided cult from launching one of Candlekeep's towers into space, along with a small trove of valuable tomes. Which is hilarious. And that, let me grab the author for that. That one was just a personal favorite because it was so lighthearted, and that it's just a lot of fun. Now, the thing about that is that also seems like it could be a self-contained free adventure, or an adventure that was maybe like $2.99 or something like that you could purchase either on the DM's Guild or directly from Roll20, because I know Roll20 and D&D Beyond have little self-contained adventures you can buy that are exactly that. The proceeds go to the authors, right, and everything, and obviously the people that wrote it and made it still get paid. But they do have these self-contained adventures, and again, I think I'm a little wary with just having them all thrown into one book and, you know, slapping the $50 tag on it for digital purchase. And so this is written by Amy Vorpal, which is a fun, I'm assuming is a pen name. It's an amazing pen name.
It's a great pen name.
Developed by Chris Perkins, edited by Scott Fitzgerald Gray. But I love this one. This one is one of my personal favorites. The other one I really wanted to talk about was Zakar and Zephyrian Tome, because it has, look at this.
Yes, the boy.
This is a dragon that is also a scientist. And they have this adorable little coral crown on their head. And it's just my absolute favorite dragon. So this is the Zephyrian Tome. I like the tome. It's obviously sealed with a lock. Recently claimed the old laboratory as his lair and is wary of other creatures that might try to take the lair from him. Values beautiful colored thing and hoards a collection of colorful books and coral sculptures, including the crown of coral that he wears. This is my favorite boy.
He is a good boy, and I love him dearly.
Yes. I'm thinking about just taking just this laboratory and putting it in one of my campaigns or my homebrew. So this I would definitely use for my homebrew. And I would absolutely also use, again, I keep messing the name up, the last adventure, Xanthoria. So any thoughts on the Zephyrian Tome? I know we mentioned the issues with Jinn and Monkey's Paws and whether or not, the Jinn offers to grant the party a wish.
Yes, I think just from the lore that was given with this Jinn, I could potentially see some DMs who kind of want to have a little bit more fun with their party. I see potential for a monkey paw scenario where it's a wish, but there are certain things that there's a certain way that you have to word it, just because, I feel like this is a very spiteful Jinn, considering what he has been through.
Probably.
So
Most Jinns are.
Yeah. So that's what I thought was kind of cool about it, where it'll grant you a wish, but at what cost? And you don't know.
Also, Pai Mei is in this from Kill Bill.
Yes.
I want to show everyone. There we go. This Pak Mei. So there was a whole adventure based on monks, and so I know that Marisha Ray had a part in Candlekeep Mysteries, but I did not see her name on any of the adventures, which was interesting. I don't know if it was more of a concept from her, but I was really hoping that the monk adventure would be written by Marisha Ray, considering the character she plays in the current season of Critical Role with Bo. But I did not see that, which was interesting. But
yeah, I'm not sure if she was a writer, or maybe if she was just an advisor of sorts. I don't remember exactly what she had said originally, but I do remember that was something that was mentioned.
I found the art from Miriam, by the way.
Yes, best girl.
Yes. So there is Miriam in all of her glory. You can see her spectral visage there. And again, I love the art. And Miriam, I might use that in my homebrew as well. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of really cool little things that you absolutely, this is a pro, a lot of really cool little things you could absolutely just kind of pluck out of here and kind of use here and there for your D&D campaigns and just put them in random places. And that I think is really cool. But there's Best Girl.
The only other one that I can think of, if you wanted to show, just to kind of illustrate what we were talking about earlier with the meme mocks, as a con, that's the only one I can think of.
So here is Vermilion. Also, another one of these maps in that same adventure, which is a little lackluster. I'm not really a fan. And yeah, the Platinum Mine.
Yes, I do remember the mine one now.
I'm going to tab over.
So if you're not familiar with meme mocks, they have a very nasty habit of either frightening players, specifically because they do inflict the frightened condition, and their bite has a chance to stun players. So it is a very stun lock heavy kind of creature, and there are multiple of them. So I don't really, there you go. So that's what they look like. They are not pretty by any sense of the word.
That's the skull it's standing on.
I know, right? It's just to emphasize the point that they are awful creatures.
Yeah.
But yeah, so granted, their stun DC, I believe, is a 12 or 13.
Oh, but, DC 11 con save.
Okay, so it's a little lower than I thought. But not only do they have the fear aura, they can teleport, and their claws have a chance to stun. It's a lot. I feel for a CR4.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, a CR2, I believe they are for characters that are 4 and up. Just because 4 is just barely out of that what I would consider the tutorial levels.
Right.
So they don't quite have that proficiency bump, but they're still a little bit tougher, but they're still not quite as good or as strong as a level 5 character.
Right. And the best part about D&D for me is that you clearly have an aversion to mean locks, which means that you had a unique experience. I'm sure you had a unique and traumatic experience with mean locks.
Oh, yes.
In your D&D history, which for me, it's cultists, dragon cultists specifically. I hate dragon cultists because we almost, the first 5e game I ever played was when it was a couple years after Horde of the Dragon Queen came out. And we were playing Horde of the Dragon Queen, and the cultists just wrecked us in the first area, that's my least of all the 5e adventures. Horde is my absolute least favorite. I tried DMing it. I couldn't do it. It was it was almost like the Skyrim NPC meme. I ran it as a joke with my boyfriend. And we had Governor Nighthill in the town, and we ran Governor Nighthill as a joke, like he was a Skyrim NPC. So, of course, with the typical Scottish accent for the dwarf, just because it was a kind of a goofy thing that we were doing. It's like, you adventurer must go back out into. And I was doing all the hand motions and everything. You must go back out into the fray. Find us with my terrible Scottish accent. And it was, and he was directing, and he's like, go and find the civilians and bring them back. And the dragon is just floating overhead, like listlessly not doing anything. And yeah, but with like the hand motions and everything, and kept telling, and it was the same thing every time my boyfriend would come back into the town, it was like, you must go back out into the fray.
I think it's interesting that you bring up Horde of the Dragon Queen, just because that's actually my first campaign when I was getting into D&D. That was my first campaign. I'm actually, with my current Saturday group, going through Rise of Tiamat. And I think my biggest complaint, just, spoilers and stuff for Horde of the Dragon Queen, is just, it's so horribly unbalanced for the CRs that they throw at PCs at certain levels. Like, I think the what is the blue dragon, I think he is like a CR2, a CR2 or 3 for a bunch of PCs level 1. And it's like, I understand that there is a limit, but like, there's a reason why you don't throw a dragon at this party at level 1.
So I'm going to look. So a challenge rating for an adult dragon, for a green dragon at least, is 15. There is no adult blue dragon, but there's a black and a green. And the CR that's an adult blue dragon. So it's probably around CR 15. I think it might be CR 15, that's insanity. Granted, you're not supposed to fight it, but still.
Right. Like, I don't recall if it was an adult or if it was a young one, but still, like, even a young one is like maybe CR 5-6, something like that. Yeah. And like, if it's a wormling at the absolute lowest, it is probably a 2. Because I believe that's what a wormling blue dragon would be, is a CR2. But I mean, it's a dragon. Like, it can breath weapon and then just take out an entire party, and there's your TPK. Yep. And I mean, towards the end of it, you again, spoilers, you fight, I believe he's an 8, I want to say an adult white dragon, but you're like level 8, 9, something like that. And, once again, going into the topic of it is a dragon. And I know the point of it is to like get the different factions to fight each other. And that's actually what our group ended up doing. But it's like, it's a dragon, guys. Like, that's terrifying. If you don't do it correctly, there is the very real threat of a TPK.
Yeah. So I think our group did very well with that fight. They were doing a lot of damage because they had done Lost Mine of Phandelver first, so they had magic weapons. And by the time they got to fight that white dragon, which the name eludes me right now, but that exact fight, they did pretty well. But you're right. But the danger is always there. But I felt like that fight was reasonable. It was just the very beginning.
Maybe I'm a little biased just because I know with that fight, we didn't play any other game before. As I said, that was literally my first campaign. So I think we had maybe a couple of magic items between us, but it wasn't like enough for the whole party. Right. And even as a larger party, we were still, terrified to go up against this adult white dragon. Because, gotta pay respect where respect is due. It is a dragon.
Yeah. I mean, the game is Dungeons and Dragons.
Exactly.
So I just want to point out the Naiad art real quick, and just how pretty they are.
Yes, beautiful. I love it.
But we only have a few minutes left, so I wanted to segue over to our favorite, which I think was both of our favorites.
Yes.
But Xanthoria. And let's bring it up. Here it is. Okay. And first of all, look at the tome. I love the tome. First and foremost. So you already know it's going to be good. This is my absolute favorite. So here's the hook. Here's the hook, which I love. And I am 100% using this. It's an adventure for 16th level character. Using my DM voice again. A deadly fungal infection called the saprophytic plague is ravaging the Sword Coast. The plague not only targets beasts and humanoids, but also destroys crops and stored foodstuffs, causing famine and sickness on an epic scale. Religious and civil authorities are unable to stem the tide of the saprophytic plague, and even a wish spell can't seem to undo the contagion, given how widespread it's become. The mystery surrounding Xanthoria has to do with the discovery of a mad druid's quest for lichdom, and the plague she unleashed in the process. Ordinary liches contain their soul in inanimate objects. The druid Xanthoria discovered a way to house her soul in a living being. So the first part is an adventure hook. The second part is the GM notes. Again, spoilers for the whole thing, but it basically takes place in it's a lich's lair, and it's a fungal lich. And this lich is, I just want to show you the lich here. She is beautiful. Look at this creature.
Love it. Every time we see this art, it drives me just a bit crazy. Cause look, the fungal into the dress, it's chef's kiss. It's beautiful.
Yes. I literally love everything about this. This is just perfect to me. And it's got everything I could ever want in D&D. Everybody loves liches. And to have a fungal lich, or a lichen lich, if you will, which is the name of the new monster, is a lichen lich. And it's a standard lich stat block, again, for DMs only at this point. There's a handout, obviously, right? There's a little artsy handout. But also as far as, let me go into the lichen lich down here. So many new monsters as well. Okay, the Lichen Lich. Their actions, legendary actions, all the usual stuff. All right, so Firestorm and Poisonous Touch. These are amazing abilities that can absolutely just knock a party right on their butts.
Oh, yeah. This is the type of monster where if you're not prepared, you're gonna have to be very quick on your feet.
And I think that's an understatement. The map is really cool too. So the map is really high quality. It is a black and white map, but there's just so much going on here, and the story is just so well written. I'm gonna see if I can bring up the author. So, okay, Tony Winslow Brill is the author. Developed by Bill Benham and Chris Perkins, edited by Kim Mohan, M-O-H-A-N. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But look at this sad fey creature.
So sad.
The sad fey creature who is distraught about okay, and here is basically what we read. Creatures that become, here's the other part of it. Creatures that become infected with the saprophytic plague fall ill with a fever and sprout disgusting, gooey fungal growths before losing their autonomy, acting like zombies. They also release spores that infect other beasts and humanoids. Eventually, the plague reduces all infected creatures and foodstuffs to puddles of ooze. Humanoids infected with the plague drone the word Xanthoria over and over for no discernible reason before death finally claims them. You have determined that there is a book by that name, which is contained in the library fortress of Candlekeep. With luck, the book holds information that might help you end the saprophytic plague before it wipes out every village, town, and city and Faerun. So this is a world-ending apocalyptic adventure, and the ending, not going to spoil it here. I would definitely check out the ending, but it is heartbreaking. It is extremely well written. This could be a whole adventure in itself. You could run a campaign
Mm-hmm.
off of Xanthoria.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I pretty sure I said this before too. I love the Last of Us aesthetic just because
Yes.
it's so very cool, and the way you can really get into the descriptions of how it affects the victims of this fungal infection. Especially, like we were saying, you could definitely make this into a campaign and make this 1 to 20 if you wanted to raise her up and make her truly the BBEG, which honestly she would certainly be worthy of that title because man, her stat block is nutty.
Yeah, and it's a 16th. It's balanced for characters of 16th level. There's all kinds of other legendary creatures, which is a fun little thing to find in her lair. But just an absolute diva of a final boss. I love it. I love this villain so much. This story on its own is an 11 out of 10.
Oh yeah,
it's a perfect D&D story. Any final thoughts on Xanthoria or about Candlekeep mysteries in general before we do a general summary and wrap up and assessment ranking maybe?
No, I think all the gushing I've done has been pretty sufficient. And as we kind of said towards the beginning, the cons, there's not many. There's really not. There are some that stick out, but I can't really think of many other cons that we haven't talked about.
Right. So I think overall, if I had to give my absolute opinion on this, I would say I really like the idea of individual adventures. Maybe that could have been purchased as standalone adventures, the plug and play. But there's so many adventures in here that I personally didn't like. I know both of us had issues with several of them, as far as how, I don't want to say well written, but just weak hooks or vice versa. And it really just, I think as a whole, maybe not quite worth the $50 for the digital purchase, but I'm thinking maybe if it was a little bit cheaper, it might be worth it. But I mean, I'm not a marketing expert. I don't know how much these things cost to produce. I don't know what the profit margin is, but it seemed like there's a lot of stuff in here that just is not going to be used. And just to have so much uncertainty is, what I really like is the idea of potentially having individual adventures. I think maybe in the future, if there were like Xanthoria, if that was released as an individual adventure for $9.99 or $15.99, if it was flushed out just a little bit more, you could go up to, the 15 versus the 10. But it seems like if I had to, just on everything we've seen, it's definitely, more of an average type of experience. Like if we were on a rating system, I would say like a 6 or so out of 10 in general. But some of the adventures on their own, some of the adventures on their own are like 11 or 10 out of 10, like
Right.
Xanthoria and Candlekeep Deconstruction. How about you? What are your kind of final thoughts in that vein?
I feel if you really want to buy it, I feel like just understand that you're going to have to do a little bit more legwork as a DM to really make it work. I think personally, I would buy it if it's on sale. Like if you can find it somewhere on sale, I would definitely pick it up because obviously, as we've gone over, there are a lot of things that are worth it in here. And if you're really dead set on trying to do some of the later ideas that are in here, I would say, just definitely go ahead, pick it up, and just understand that legwork is going to have to be a absolute must for some of the earlier concepts. And I'm leaning a little bit more on the I want to give it like a 6.5, mostly because when it ends and that finale, it is definitely knocked out of the park. Like it's really, really good. And I feel like that it's not quite enough to say, hey, it's a 7 out of 10, but 6.5 is for me.
Yeah. And again, this is just kind of our general assessment after kind of because we did have a few hours where we sat down with each other and went through every adventure and looked at the new monsters and the new magic items, which are really great. There's a lot of really great monsters in here. There's a lot of really amazing magic items in here. The maps, some are good and some are great, but there's a lot that are a little lackluster, and they're all black and white with the exception of Candlekeep. But the adventures in general, some of them stand on their own. Some of them are a little more iffy and plot hooks are weak. But like Dee said, Zendoria, it just is knocked out of the park. It's a good quote. I like that. But this is based on us talking about it again a second time here, and then the first time for a few hours. It was like 2 or 3 hours that we had where we sat down and just went over the whole thing.
Mm-hmm, something like that.
Yeah, so none of us have played through any of the modules, but our initial assessment as long-term players and DMs and content creators is just, again, it is what it is. I'm sure that people are going to play through it and really enjoy certain adventures, and maybe playing through the whole thing might offer a different perspective. This is just kind of our initial impressions, kind of our initial thoughts on it based off of, like, having some time to just sit down and flip through the whole thing.
Right. And, as has been said, really what's going to make it is the group that you play with and the DM that you have. But I mean, that can be said about really anything that you play with D&D.
Exactly.
Because, D&D it's a really good hobby.
Got my books. There we go. My books behind me. I have to get the right angle with the camera.
There you go.
So that's only like half of them. The other half are like scattered around the rest of my studio apartment. There's just D&D books everywhere. I need to expand more onto the other side. But yeah, so 6.5-ish out of 10, I think, for our initial thoughts. So, but again, at the end of the day, our opinion doesn't really matter. My opinion doesn't matter. It's just our initial thoughts, kind of a guideline for initial thoughts on Candlekeep Mysteries. So I think that's all of our time for today. Any promotions or anything you want to plug for do you have an art page, or where can people find you if they want to go say hello on social media? Do you have like a public social media?
I do. Let me double check which one I get out.
And I think you drew your character art for Ibaruli yourself, right? The one
yes,
that's on your...
I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you ever want to come say hi, I am on Instagram by Afro Puff Lady. It's all one word. I also do, let's see. I mean, you can find me pretty much anywhere, mostly on Instagram. I don't quite have my Twitch set up just yet, but maybe I'll have that by June, hopefully. But yeah, for now, I'm just kind of on Instagram, and that's about it.
All right. I love it. That'll work. All right. So, and obviously you can find me at Twitter at ESP Eryn Spencer, or at SEGirl2187, and on Twitch at twitch.tv/SEGirl. So thank you for hanging out with us, Dee, for tonight. It was absolutely amazing to have you on the show. I would love to have you back. Nobody listens to me, but I'm hoping that they will listen to you on your thoughts on Candlekeep Mysteries.
Sure. No problem.
So it seems like we're on the same page. So I'm excited to have you back in a couple of months to talk about Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, which I'm very excited about. That's easier to delve into because it's technically a fluff, but you can really sink your teeth into the character books. So there's going to be new character classes, new races. It's much easier for us to kind of break it down and talk about it versus just having to flip through the adventures and the mysteries and having to put together our initial thoughts without having played the module and having these little separate modules, not really having that be viable anyway. Just a weird book to do our first D&D episode on. Candlekeep Mysteries. A weird first foray into it. But thank you again for joining us, and thank you everyone for hanging out with us. As usual, information, links, everything that will be in the doobly-doo down below. And we'll see everyone next month for another episode of ESP Eryn Spencer Podcast and ESP D&D now, which I'm really hyped about.
Yay!
All righty, so we'll see you again in a couple of months. And cool. Have a good night, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.